Good evening and welcome everyone to the One and Only Sports special Saturday night stream. Welcome everyone to the One and Thank you. This roundtable is building off of the existing discussions and topics that the Ultimate community has already started. So for those who have watched the AUDL anti-racism discussion panel, that panel went into great detail of the history and the context of people of color within America and Ultimate as a sport. So our panel is going to build off that and have more of a focus on an open discussion in a safe environment. One and Only Sports has provided his platform for people of color to use their voice and explain their unique perspective, both in the world and within the Ultimate community. And this is why Theo Wan is not present on stream today. It is important to note that any statements or opinions from the panelists are of their own, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of One and Only Sports or myself as the facilitator. So I just want to set the stage a little bit and set some expectations for everyone watching this stream. This is not a typical game stream that the One and Only Sports does. This is an important discussion. This roundtable will discuss different terminology and provide some tangible action items for players, team leadership, and the governing bodies of Ultimate, such as Ultimate Canada and UK Ultimate, can implement to be an ally to players of color. It's important for you as the audience to embrace the uncomfortableness of this, to self-reflect on each topic and experience, and to learn how you can grow to be anti-racist. So just a quick introduction. My name is Julia Peden. I live in Southern Ontario in Canada, and I have experience participating in open discussions surrounding cultural appropriation, and I have diversity training from various leadership opportunities I've had while at Western University. I am the facilitator for this roundtable, which means that I'm guiding the questions and the discussion for our panelists. My role is not to provide any personal opinion or input unless requested by a panelist, but instead I will allow the conversation to flow naturally through the questions while keeping the panelists targeted and focused on what they need to be talking about. So without further ado, let's get into each panelist. So can everyone go around and pretty much just provide a little bit of background of who they are, where they've played, maybe where they grew up, if that provides some context, maybe your education, anything like that. And also, why are you here? Why are you here a part of this discussion? So Devon, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, so I'm Devon Asemota. I grew up in Ajax, Ontario, so in that southwestern Ontario bubble. Playing with Stud and Hound in Durham, and then I also played with the University of Waterloo, Ontario. And last summer I played for Thunder Ultimate, so I got my taste in the mix scene. And then most recently I wanted an international exchange, and I at the University of Birmingham, and also with Birmingham Ultimate. So like England people are there, shout out to you. And then I also played with Devon Ultimate, my namesake. Then although I'm really nervous today, I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm here because I just want to start dialogue in a lot of teams and give some perspectives, because I feel like people don't really know what Black people have gone through, and I just want to make the sport like a better place for people who look like me.
My name's Kim Davidson. I'm from Toronto, Ontario. I have been playing Ultimate for a very long time. I went to University of Toronto, but I did not play at the University of Toronto. I actually started playing after I graduated from university, and I started touring the year I turned 30. So I'm kind of a late arriver to the Ultimate game. I'm currently very active in the Masters and the Grandmasters Ultimate community here in Toronto. I played pretty much exclusively women's. I did play the World Masters. I played a couple of years ago on a mixed team, but usually I play on women's. I am here because, and like Devin said, I'm also a little bit nervous, but I'm here because I think it's important to have Black voices amplified, and I recognize my role in being one of the Black voices that needs to be amplified. I'm very aware that all the circles that I move in, that I am the only Black person that a lot of my friends with, but I think it's important that to try to help learn from each other. So
okay, great. I guess that's me. Hey everyone, my name is Remi, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario, and I'm excited to be here. So just to give a little bit of background, I guess I first got introduced to Frisbee through high school and university, and it was fairly monochromatic setting. As of late, 2020 marks my 10 years of elite Frisbee, and I've been through the Toronto system for the most part, with Goat for the bulk of that, the Toronto Rush, and I've had a good number of international experience, both for Canada and other club teams. And I think it's important for me to be here today, just as a representative or an ambassador, so that other people of color can see that they have that model, that mentor that's in the elite scene, and giving them something to strive for and know that they can also achieve it themselves.
Well, I'm next. I guess my name is Lance Blackstock. I'm living in Ottawa, Ontario, and started in Frisbee in high school, and playing about 11 years now. Mostly playing in the mixed division. Have dabbled in the open, like fun tournaments and stuff. We've been more in the mixed division with Battleship from Saint Jean. Did a couple of international tournaments as well, mostly for fun in the Philippines and Italy, and I'm just trying to work it out. I feel like I'm definitely excited to be here, definitely nervous as well, but I feel like why I'm here is to also be an ambassador, and also maybe there's certain things that I felt like had kept in for a little bit and didn't know how to put out, and maybe be able to hear from my fellow panelists and learn a bit more, and hearing things to maybe help me in the future be able to my teammates and teammates as well. So
Hi, so my name is Tiffany Anderson, and I'm currently president of SMOG, played with SMOG the last couple of years, preferably predominantly in the mixed division. We have a women's division too, just with the lovely ladies of SMOG. I have grew up in a predominantly white middle class area. My school, albeit one of the best schools in the area, so that is Nottingham, England, it was predominantly white, and I was one of 3 Black people in the entire school. So I personally feel my sort of experience and everything like that has been a lot different. I was speaking to Kim earlier, and we've had conversations, and we've been talking about the way people say the whitest Black person I've ever met, things like that. So that's what I thought. I'm bringing that sort of experience to the table, and I'm here because I was having a really good conversation with Devon, and I want to be that change you want to see. I want to the people in the future, they are comfortable and they are supported when they're playing ultimate, and they feel comfortable. And on the other side, my friends and my teammates that have reached out, they also feel comfortable, and they understand what sort of okay and not so okay to say, and how to act, and how they can support us as teammates, how a club can support players and people of colour. So that's mainly the main reason sort of why I'm here.
Awesome. So that's great to hear. I think it's important for the audience to understand that this is a platform for these players to just openly talk, share their experiences, and you as the audience have the privilege to listen in and to try and self-reflect on that. So keep that in mind. It's just an open discussion. So to get us started, the first question we have is, when did you first experience racism? Devon, would you like to get us started on that?
Yeah, not too long ago, I guess. Yeah, so I was in grade 2. So for those who aren't in Canada, that's like around 8 years old, maybe 7. And full playground day, we were running around the playground. I beat this guy, Nicholas H, in a race, and he turned around. He was like, "Oh, you nigger." I was like, what does that word mean? And then he was kind of like, "Oh, you don't know what that word means?" And I was like, "Well, should I?" He's like, "No, it's just a bad word in New York." And grade 8 self, that's something that just didn't sit right with me, because I was like, why is a word only regional? I asked my teacher at the time, I was like, "Hey, Sage called me a nigger. What did that mean?" She was like, "Oh, no, he probably didn't mean it. Don't worry about it." And I was like, okay, not really satisfied because I didn't really get an answer. So I go home to my parents and I'm like, "Hey, Nicholas H called me a nigger. Like, what does this word mean?" And then that's when they're kind of like, "Oh my gosh, it's happened already. Like, being so young." And then that was like my first racism talk at home. And that's when we really like opened up the conversation like that I can remember.
Yeah, for me, definitely had my first experience. I want to say, for my experience, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was still pretty new in my career with transpo, and I was just doing a route one time. Usually what happens is that when you pull up to a stop, about a minute before, your sign tends to switch to the destination. So I was about a block away from the first stop, and I pulled up at the intersection. It was a red light, and I was laying into the road, and all of a sudden I see this older white gentleman just approach my bus and try to get on the bus. Now, mind you, again, I'm in the middle of the road, and I'm like, well, one, you can't get on the bus, and two, my first stop is a block away. So the light started to turn green, and I said, well, I have to go. So started to drive off, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just yells out, "You fucking nigger!" And I was just like, what the heck? So what was kind of crazy at first is I kind of like laughed it off and was just like, whoa, surprisingly that happened. Like, damn, how mad were you that you wanted to catch the bus? So I continued on, finished my run, and at the end of the run, it wasn't until the end that I finally, like, it kind of hit me at that time. I was like, okay, no, that actually did happen, and it really kind of put me in a spot. I'm like, is that normal for that to happen? And really made me kind of feel a little bit away. But then, kind of after I reflected on it, I just continued on throughout the, and that was my experience.
Yeah, I can go next. So I'd say for me, it's nothing as overt as I guess Devon and Lance have highlighted, but I think it goes back a couple years, and it's mostly a little bit of the microaggressive nature that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. But just those subtle comments that especially like when you're talking to someone on the phone and they're like, "Oh, you don't sound black." Like that always strikes me. It makes me laugh a little bit, but it always strikes me as like that's such a weird comment to make. Always, like, what are we supposed to sound like, or things of that vein. So those are kind of been the micro ones of my experience.
My experience is very similar to Remi's in that from a young age, it's more microaggressions, and it's not even anything like individuals directing racism towards you. I guess mine is more kind of a systemic thing, like not having toys or dolls or books that had characters that looked like me. Makeup. I remember in high school trying to buy makeup, same as my friends did, and not being able to find foundation that was the same shade that my skin was. Even something as simple as my name. Going to a doctor's office and having the nurse call my name, Kim Davidson, and I would stand up and the nurse would be like, "No, Kim Davidson." I go, "Yeah, that's me. That's my name." I think the first instance I experienced of overt racism was on a golf course when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when Tiger Woods had hit the scene and black people playing golf was now a thing. And when I tell the people the story of the comment that was directed to me, a gentleman who was who said something to me, like, "Well, you people," and feeling, the intense emotion I had having that, even those words directed towards me, you know, I've had people to say, well, what's the big deal? And until you experience it, it's very difficult to articulate, but it is such a raw, visceral thing. And it's hard to convey, but it's something that I hope people will be able to maybe empathize more.
Tiff, if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump in quickly. Kim, I think your internet is cutting out quite a bit. If you'd like to try to mute yourself and then try to relocate somewhere in the house, if you have that option. If not, we can try and work through it. I just thought I would provide some feedback from, I've gotten a couple different people messaging me. Cool. Tiff, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really similar to Kim and Remi's actually, and it's just really simple stuff that maybe others don't think about or don't take for granted. Take for granted, things like that. But it's just really, so I think one of the first one is I went on a holiday with my friends from school, and we all got a big like caricature drawn of us. There was like 8 of us, all caricature. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful drawing. But when the artist, and we were in France at the time, and when the artist came around to me, he didn't have the color, like any color that he could draw, he could paint. He did not have the color for my skin. He didn't have it, and I was last as well. So it was like a really beautiful like drawing, coloring, you know, art. It was a piece of art of all my friends, like a way to sort of commemorate the holiday. And he got to me and just didn't have my color, and I was just like, oh. What's going to happen now? What's going to happen? Like, what am I going to look like on this? So I was like, it was kind of shocking. It was really hurtful. And I still have that drawing, to be fair. And we just sort of left me white. We left me the color of the paper. And yeah, it was really hurtful. And I was kind of thinking, well, how come? Why not? Like, you know, we've got so many like beautiful people, so many beautiful races, so many beautiful colors. And if you're drawing people, like in my head, I'm surely, but no, not at that time. And that one, that sort of, you know, I was like, that didn't sit right. I was like, oh, that's a bit painful. And he just said he's never had it. He's never thought about it. And it was really interesting that way. And the same with sort of like Remi and Kim, just really little things like dolls that you play with, and you know, storybooks that you read, and everything like that. Like you want to see yourself when you're growing up and doing things like that. And so it was very sort of one way, and it was no sort of role models or anything like that. So that was you know, from a very young age, that's probably the sort of thing I remember. But the most distinct one was definitely the caricature drawing, the piece of art that we got as a group of friends. So I think that one stands out for me from the earliest memory I can think of.
Really interesting that you say that, because like I remember growing up a lot of times, like buying Lego, like there would always be like a white hand on the box, and I'd be like, gosh, is this like not for me? Like, is this only for white people? Like, and like simple things like that. Like I know Band-Aid recently came out that they were gonna put in a bunch of shades, and I didn't know Band-Aids were meant to be like skin tone until recently, because like I don't know, I guess it only matched like white fingers. So like whenever I had a cut, like I had a white Band-Aid, and it showed that it was a white Band-Aid. But like if I had a facial cut, like being able to have a Band-Aid that's the tone of your skin would be a pretty cool thing to see. And you just don't think about that as much growing up.
Unless you're Nelly, but I totally echo that.
And little things like wearing tights, wearing skin-colored tights. Tights have been like the biggest problem. Growing up through school, I was jealous of my friends that had skin-colored tights on. I was like, you girls look great. You girls look cool. And I had the thickest, woolliest, physically black-colored tights, because I couldn't wear their skin-colored tights. The skin-colored tights weren't around to match my skin color. So it was either thick, woolly tights, black tights, or no tights, which my mother was not letting me out of the house. So.
All right. Next question is, what does systemic oppression mean to you and how do you experience it? Lance, do you want to get us started on that?
Systematic oppression. Can I let someone go first? Is that okay?
Kim, would you like to get us started on that? Maybe your experiences with systemic oppression and how that could, I mean, you guys talked about it actually quite a bit in different ways, but maybe more specifically.
Systemic oppression. It's so big. It's such a big concept, and it's so difficult to explain to people who don't experience it on a daily basis. A lot of what we've been talking about, the makeup, the toys, the books, the tights, is part of, you know, when you use the word oppression, it sounds like a very active word. Like this is something that people are trying to do. And I think what I would like people to make clear is that we understand that it might not be something intentional. But the fact of the matter is that when you don't consider everyone, you're excluding people. And it's that consistent pattern of exclusion that's constant, ongoing, to me is what makes it feel like it's part of a larger system of oppression.
That's a really good explanation, Kim. It is very difficult to summarize. Let's get into a little bit more of microaggression. So just want to provide some context and a definition. Microaggression is a term used for brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, and environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative slights and insults towards any group, particularly culturally marginalized groups. Would you guys like to discuss, what microaggressions do you hear the most? Why does it make you uncomfortable? And maybe also like stereotypes. Remi, would you like to get us started on that?
Very good point. Thank you. So yeah, kind of what I alluded to, I guess, before about not sounding Black, but there's so many of the other ones that we encounter just in passing, like meeting somebody new, and like in Toronto, for example, something like you don't know very well. I'm like, oh, where are you from? Like that question is so triggering, I find. And a lot of the times, like I know where they're going with the question, but I often like to play with it in the sense and give them all the wrong answers and see how far they're willing to take it, if they're really going to spell out what they're actually asking. There's so many other things that I've seen as well that often come out and people don't skip a beat when they say it, like ones that I've experienced personally, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have felt it as well, as when people say, you're such a white Black person, which has so many layers of confusion to it, and if you try to unravel it, but that's another one of those ones that shouldn't fly under the radar, that is really rooted in some stuff that really needs to be brought to the surface. So that's my take on the microaggression that I've experienced.
I know what you mean, especially because it's like, what did you expect? Like that vision of the stereotypical person that B displays and like in a lot of movies, and when you don't match up to that, people are kind of just like, oh, why aren't you like this? Like, I'm Blacker than you because I listen to rap music. Like that's just something a lot of people get when they're younger, because like, I don't know, if I'm into top 40 stuff, like shouldn't be condemned to listen to hip hop for the rest of my life because I'm Black and it fits your stereotype of what someone is. For me, like microaggression I got, or like I got what Remi got a lot, but the microaggression that gets me is when people tell me I'm well spoken. It's just like a very offensive thing to say, because it's like, for example, if I give a university presentation in a classroom or in a seminar and the professor's like, oh, you're so well spoken, like, do you expect me at 20 years old not to be able to articulate points? You know what I mean? Like, you can compliment people in so many different ways, and it's like, oh, that was really good points. I really like the way you speak. I really like the pace of speech. Just being like well spoken is just such a slap in the face, because it's like, I'm sure white people aren't told they're well spoken a lot of the times because people expect white people to speak well. But when you come into a professional setting and they're like, oh my gosh, wow, articulate Black person, like, that's crazy. That's it really gets me heated, because it's like you had such low expectations for me coming in that bare minimum, and I'm well spoken. It really gets me.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly has to do with in the frisbee field. But I mean, I personally like brush off a lot of things a lot, but I still every now and then have those ones that kind of ick me. For example, you know, if I match up against somebody and, you know, they beat me in a race, or, you know, this guy beat me 2 times, so I'm like, I said, oh, I thought like Black people were able to jump or we can run. And again, personally for me, I brush those off a lot because, I mean, I play around a lot with my teammates a lot, and we joke every now and then. But, you know, every now and then it's still a couple times where you think, are they, you know, saying that they're supposed to do like that, or, you know, actually joking around. So a couple times where, you know, those things that may seem like it's small still at sometimes to still eat, because I don't want the wrong person to kind of think that they're just generalizing that all Black people should be faster or should be able to, you know, just trying to generalize me to something. Just like, you beat me, that's cool. I'll just work harder to get you back next time.
Definitely had those comments.
Yeah,
Sorry.
how do those stereotypes? That's okay, Kim. I was just gonna say, how do those stereotypes, you know, make you feel? How does that affect you, Kim? Did you want to make a comment on that?
It's great because my point was going to be that for me, knowing that people have experiencing microaggressions, you constantly second guess myself, second guess my home, second guess my actions, second guess my behavior. I am a naturally loud, exuberant person by nature, but especially on the ultimate field, or when I'm in a place where I'm not with my friends or not with people that know me, I'm consciously aware of, am I playing the angry Black woman right now, or am I moving into that territory? Am I getting out? Is my head going like this? Like, you know, you feel like you have to be more self-aware, cognizant of what your actions are of how other people watching you, and it's a constant underlying thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the questions that we had from our forum that we put out was, does one racist comment make you a racist? Would anyone like to go on that?
I could say something just before that about the microaggressions. You asked like how destructive it can be. I think it can be really, a lot of people like viewing right now may not, like, yeah, Black people are really fast. Like, Devon, you're like actually a really fast ultimate player and you can jump pretty high. Like, I think a lot of people might not know what's wrong with that. And just to like put it out there to people, like, what's wrong with that is like you're putting needed expectations on a Black person just because of their skin color. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like before I even knew who Remi was in the ultimate community, I heard his name. Like, if I bid or layouts, like someone's like, oh, you don't lay out as high as Remi. And I'm kind of just like, Remi, what do you mean? Like, I'm sorry I didn't get that bid, or like, I'm sorry I didn't go higher. Yeah, like before I even knew who he was, like I was being compared to him, and it's just unrealistic stereotype sometimes, because it's like, he's a grown man. I was just a 17-year-old boy playing frisbee, and no, I'm not going to jump as high as Remi, and I shouldn't feel less of myself because of that. You know what I mean? So just to anyone out there who's like wondering, that's why some of those microaggressions or comments really hurt us, because unwanted and unneeded expectations. Like, I'm out here Googling how to improve my vertical jump because someone said I don't jump as high as Remi. It can be destructive, and people don't really want to be in that environment.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. I didn't know that I was having that effect, but I'm glad you think that I'm a grown man, so the ruse is working. But you're totally right. It's a lot of undue pressure. Like even if I was taken out of the equation, there's just such a high expectation, I think, on just Black athletes of whatever level, especially those ones like if we take Frisbee, for example, that are just starting. There is that hyper expectation to be extremely athletic, extremely quick, extremely responsive, and sometimes it's more of a burden for, I guess, both for the race, the sport, and player development. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I think the worst part about these microaggressions is like a lot of people probably don't know they use them. A lot of people, like I can remember people's words 2 years later because of the weight of that comment and how much it affected me. But I think a lot of people, like, they just say it and it's so subconscious that they just forget about it after, and like left having to make amends with that person and not getting the apology you might deserve.
And then to go into the next question here, if someone says one racist comment, does that make them a racist? We did discuss a little bit earlier, and my take on it is that, again, it really depends on what exactly that they said that was racist, because I personally think that like there's maybe different racist comments that you could say that may be more severe than I feel like others, and I personally don't like to like come up right away and just like, oh, okay, you're racist right off the bat. Because sometimes I feel like people just are misinformed and maybe their intention is a bit different than what I or other people may perceive. So I feel like communication, I feel that's the really biggest thing to one, either inform somebody who probably didn't know, and I feel like if they decide after that to continue that, then that could be a bit more easy for you to say, okay, maybe you're racist because you have now ignored the information that I put out to you and my feelings on how I was affected by you saying that. But if you continue on, then it can make it easier for you to say that.
Yeah, no, I get that as well, and I think there's another layer to that as well, and it kind of comes from what place is the comment coming from? Like, is it coming from ignorance, at which point you can help educate or enlighten? Granted, it's not always our responsibility to be the educators in this case, but for the purposes of this, enlighten so that they understand that what they said was probably racist. And then you have the other side of it's like, if they know, and then it becomes a completely different question.
I agree with both of you. I don't think one microaggression, one ignorant comment can make you racist, but I think like the continued, repeated actions of that really add up to being a racist. And I think people are like, they get called a racist. They're like, oh my gosh, not racist. I would never. I have a Black friend. Do that. But like, you just have to understand, like, you guys have heard that before. Yeah, you just have to like understand that like someone's calling you a racist, chances are you might be a racist, and you have to do some self-reflection rather than looking at them for the blame,
Yeah, we've totally all heard of that. Most of us are probably that Black friend that people are referencing to, especially as Frisbee players.
I have Devon on speed dial. Be racist.
Kim, do you have any thoughts on that now that you're back in live with us?
Now that
Thank you.
I'm back and got proper video now. Yay! As I don't know if I mentioned before that I'm a teacher, and at school we talk a lot about differentiating behavior from the person. So I think when we're offering that feedback to people, it would be helpful that we tell them that comment or what you just said or what you just did was racist. And if you are being told that something that you have done is racist, then take that feedback as just that. So if somebody says that's racist, hear what you just did was racist, not I think that you are a racist. They're two very different comments and reflect two completely different ideas. So I think that that's important when we're discussing, you know, that feedback to individuals. And yeah, please don't come and ask your Black friend if what
So glad
somebody
you got your
said to you
connection
was
back to say
racist
that.
is actually racist, because, you know, you're not going to like what we have to say.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a great perspective, and I've heard that as well when it comes to, you know, calling your friends out and saying, or maybe family members, maybe an older generation who struggle to understand the changes that are happening in the world. The best way to deal with maybe an uncle or an aunt who just don't quite get it is to say, hey, I don't think that you recognized that what you said is racist. You know, let's talk about that, rather than saying, Uncle Bob, you're a racist. It's really hard to, people get very defensive, as I'm sure you know. So that's a very, very great perspective that you provided. That's fantastic. Another question that we have is, what are your thoughts on people saying all lives matter or referring to Blue Lives Matter, which is in regards to the police officers? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Tiff, you're shaking your head. Or sorry, not Tiff. Kim, you're shaking your head.
You know what? It's one of those things where you see it a lot. And the nice thing is that I've seen a lot of counter arguments to that posted on Facebook, on Instagrams. There's lots of memes and cartoons that very clearly articulate why that is not a great way of thinking. I think my favorite one is the cartoon of the individuals discussing the house on fire. And, you know, one house is clearly burning and guy walks up and is like, oh, but all houses matter. And it's like, yeah, but you know what? We're going to put out the one that's on fire right now because that's the priority. And then we'll worry about other houses another time. So, you know, I feel like people who say all lives matter, it's just kind of another screen for saying, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have this I don't want to deal with the fact that there is a problem with systemic racism. And so to work to tear that particular barrier down is a challenging one. And, you know, I just keep posting memes and hoping that one of them finally gets through. But it's frustrating.
I agree with that completely. It's almost as if they're not seeing our struggle. They're not seeing the problem we're having right in this moment. You know, it's going down in history. And I think all of a sudden, you know, it's amazing. Like, everyone's tired, but we're all tired of it. And right now, everyone is coming together because we're all tired and we're upset and we're angry, and everyone's upset and everyone's tired and everyone's angry. And it's a beautiful thing that's happening right now. And at this moment of time, you know, especially, you know, if you're walking down the street and people, you know, they bump past me and they're seeing me and they have those thoughts, it's upsetting, because I'm thinking to me, like, you know, at the problem, we're having the struggle, I'm having the struggle, the Black community are having this struggle. And so right now, it is Black Lives Matter, because we're the ones in the firing line. We're the house that's currently on fire. You know, it's not Black versus white. It's absolutely not. It is just everybody versus racism, and that's the fight we're having. We're not shunning any race to the side. We're absolutely not. We're just, at this moment in time, we need your support. You know, we're having a little bit of a struggle, and we need that backup from everyone. And I think that might be, well, from my experience, you know, I follow a bunch of things on social media, and you can see the responses, but, you know, what about all lives? And we're not saying all lives don't matter. Please don't get that wrong. Right now, we just need your support, and we're the ones in the struggle. So, and I personally, I can't, I know it's probably easy for me, you know, I'm Black. I can't see it any other way. I feel like it's frustrating. You have to justify that, and you have to understand. I feel like it's hard for me to put it into words because it just makes so much sense in my head, in my mind, in my world. And so that's, I think, similarly with Kim, seeing everything on social media put so beautifully, is that, at the moment we are just the house on fire. And we just need everyone's support and everyone's help to fight and win this battle. And that's all it is. It's not pushing any particular race on a pedestal. It's just right now we're the ones that need your support.
For me,
Tim.
I think that this.
Sorry. Go for it, Lance.
For me, it feels like just again to touch on what Tiffany said, that right now it is that Black Lives Matter, and I would also try to say that it has been going on for such a long time too. And I most of the time I really don't like discussing a lot about the all lives and blue lives and even just the political side. It just tends to bring up a lot of different problems. You're just going to get all types of comments on both sides, and really hard to really put your point across. So I just feel like, again, with us specifically, with Black Lives, is that it has been going for such a, and to think that these two, all lives and blue lives that came up, feel like it just came up as, like Tiffany mentioned earlier, something to say, hey, well, we don't want to deal with the Black Lives right now. Let's just try to put something to, like I said, to push it aside, or, try to put something else into the more important light or whatever. And, again, like Tiffany said, it's not that we are saying like all lives don't matter or blue lives. Definitely appreciate everyone and what they do. Police, definitely, for sure. We have Black cops as well as other minorities in the police force as well, and we appreciate what they do and how they protect their communities. As well as we can say that there are different problems that are going on in other cultures, for sure. So we're not, again, trying to put those down in any type of way. It's just, for us specifically, I feel that this has been going on for such a long time, and we are tired and feel like this has to be brought to the light now, and it's just, basically we're done playing games. Like, we have to show that how serious this really is, and that at some point we have to be like, stand up for yourself.
To build upon kind of what Kim and Lance talked about, how Kim said there's so many nicely illustrated memes and pictures. We've all seen the burning house. We've all seen the broken leg. We've all seen countless examples where people can explain to you why someone's life might matter more in a certain situation. And like Tiffany said, we're tired. Devon Martin got shot when I was in grade 8, so in 2012. So the fact that since 2012 Black Lives Matter has been growing and people have been talking about this, it's kind of embarrassing at this point. People say all lives matter. You're an adult speaking down on other people just because of the race and discounting people's opinion. And it's I don't know if people think it's funny. I don't know if people just can't hit a little quick Google search, but I think it's really embarrassing at this point when people say all lives matter and blue lives matter, because they're really missing the mark. It's going over their head. Missing the memes. They're missing Black people's struggles. They're missing a lot of things, and it's kind of like what doesn't click at this point? What's going on up here? So I just think it's embarrassing, when people have these perspectives, because for so long, you had your chance. This isn't a new thing. This isn't trend. This is something that's been going on for a long time, and I think you have to just look within right now if you really do think all lives matter, and think about why it's such a strong statement you believe in.
That's a really great perspective on that. We're going to move more into sports-specific stuff. So we're going to focus on so the next question is, how have you experienced racism in sports? I kind of want to focus on sports in general, and then we're going to get into maybe other sports that you've played, and then we're going to get into ultimate a little bit more. So have you played other sports before, and do you find that they are different in regards to maybe stereotypes, expectations, racism, any kind of prejudice that you may see? And is that different from what you experience in the ultimate community? I don't know if anyone would like to get us started on that. Everyone's got their thinking faces on.
I can start. I'm actually going to start with a test for all the viewers, okay? I'm going to tell you the sports I played in high school. I was on the swim team, I played field hockey, and flag football. If your eyebrows raised at any of those sports, you might be racist, especially swim team, okay? Because those aren't typically Black sports, but I did them. And I had a great time. I love them, but I always get that. You know, what did you do in high school? People expect you to say basketball. People expect you to say, you know, volleyball. Yeah. And so those types of reactions, those are microaggressions. And again, it's kind of like, you are not fitting into my idea of what you should do or what you shouldn't do. And that's not right. And I'm going to show you that that surprises me. I would love to, you know, eventually get into a world where people can say, yeah, I was on the swim team and I golfed, and people are like, yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Nice. Good for you. But you know, we talked earlier about what it's like being the only one. I feel like I've been the only one on a team since I started playing sports when I was 10, and my dad made me play softball. So at that point, I was the only girl. So I was the only girl on the softball team, which is boys. And then in high school, I was the only Black girl on the swim team. I was the only Black girl playing field hockey. I was not the only Black girl on the flag football team. So that was, you know, different. But it's hard to describe. It just, that's been my experience.
For me, I've in high school, I have played almost every sport except soccer and baseball. But I did do curling, I did badminton, I did volleyball, and then usually I did football and basketball. Now with curling and volleyball and badminton, sorry, I wouldn't say that I necessarily experienced in those sports. Like Kim said earlier, it was just those looks at first, you know, may have like seemed a bit like uneasy at times. You know, again, it's like you don't see a regular Black person playing curling or, you know, badminton for that matter. And for me, I was just like, I just wanted to try different sports. I just, you know, I always loved being active. So I'm like, I never thought of it as, well, maybe I'm not supposed to play it or whatever. I just wanted to play it. And, you know, playing those sports, I wouldn't say I personally like experienced it. Like I said, it was just those small, subtle, like looks and stuff from like other teams be like, you know, okay, it's kind of weird looking, you know, never really see that. And so, but again, most of the time when I have experienced those, it's just maybe people were, you know, it's just not their norm. So, you know, for them to, you know, do those small, subtle, like looks or, you know, certain reactions or something like that, I always took it as they just didn't know. It's like, okay, well, if it's not normal, then I think that it's okay. It's just that if it ever got a bit further where, you know, like we discussed earlier about the microaggressions, if they said, oh, well, I don't think Black people are supposed to be playing curling or anything like that, then I think that would have been a bit more serious problem. But for the majority of part when I was playing those sports, like curling and badminton, it was just those subtle looks that, again, it's just maybe just seemed out of the norm for them and, you know, kind of made me feel uneasy at times. But majority of the time it was.
Yeah, I'd like to add a layer to that, and Frisbee is certainly no exception to that by any means. And I think that how do I explain it? It comes back to the stereotyping and the expectation piece a little bit. I guess because as a black person, you don't really really expected to play Frisbee. And I'm sure that kind of trickles into other sports as well. Or you also have how I guess white people don't really expect you to be there. So it's really there's two sides to it. And I guess that's the other reason why it's good for us to be there and kind of increase those numbers so that we're not the only ones.
For me personally, I used to sail, and like Kim said, that raises a lot of eyebrows because like there's not a lot of Black people in sailing, and to be honest, there weren't a lot of Black people in sailing. So that was definitely like you get looks and why are you here type of comments or like that type of thing really goes deep. And I played volleyball. Only the only Black person on my rep team when I started. Then the second year I played, there was another Black guy, so we were like, brothers. Yeah, it's more like the sports that people expect you to play that you didn't. So a lot of people like ask me if I played basketball, and like anyone who really knows me knows like I don't play basketball. It's not my thing. I was never good at it. I only made my grade 8 team. That was the only basketball team I've ever been on. I learned I can barely do a layup. Like it's just not a sport I ever touched partly because of those expectations. Like people expect you to be so good, or like you go to a new place. And like I remember we played basketball at my one volleyball practice. Like cross training, we were bored, and I got picked first, and it was their mistake because I couldn't do anything for them. Like wasn't even good. So it's like people expect you to play football, and I never touched a football. My mom didn't want me to get a concussion in high school. Like it's those expectations that you don't meet up to. Like you don't fit their mold. Like if like white people close their eyes and they're like, think about a Black student and what sports they're going to play, they're probably going to say basketball and football, and I did neither. So
That's a really good point. Go for it, Lance, please.
If I just wanted to ask the group on how, like, so we've basically been discussing on, when we have played certain sports that, as you say, Black people haven't really played. Or what made you, like, kind of decide to still, maybe you weren't even thinking about how the atmosphere would be if you, decided to play that sport. Like, basically for me, when I decided to try the curling and the badminton and stuff like that, it was basically because I wanted to try it. Never thought that, I would either experience the microaggression or, get those looks or whatever. So I'm curious, like, in all you guys' experience on, when you had played those sports and had those certain comments or even just actions, would you find yourself thinking about that when you decided to play that sport, or it happened while you were playing it?
I think personally for me, I was the only Black kid in my grade from JK to grade 6, so like kind of like 4 to like 11. So I was really used to being in white dominated spaces and not seeing people like me. So growing up, of course, like it can be mean sometimes, like looking back on it now, but I was kind of numb to all those microaggressions. Like it was just a part of my regular life. Like it was kind of just like something I had to experience. I went in those white dominated spaces, like when I sailed or when I was the only Black guy on my volleyball team. It's kind of like I didn't think twice about it because what was happening in sport, what was also happening in school, was also happening extracurriculars. It was kind of just like my life. So it's like that narrative didn't change because I played sports. So looking back on it now, I didn't hate being the only Black guy because I was used to being the only Black guy. I wasn't aware of representation and seeing people that look like you. I wasn't really aware of that just because I hadn't seen that a lot.
Yeah, very, very similar. I'd say I've been in mostly white dominated spaces, especially I guess chasing education. Like I went to Queens, where no one's a stranger to what the demographic or the cultural spread is at Queens. So it's always been something that I've just gotten, I guess, used to, kind of like what Devon said there. But in terms of like translating over to sport, it's never really stopped me. And I know a lot of people, when you talk about the main quote unquote Black sports, like your basketball and your what have you, some people might think like, okay, that's the cool thing to do. I don't think, and this might be just like an inkling that people might think that Frisbee isn't cool for Black people. It's not a cool sport for Black people. Like, we should be elsewhere. I've never thought of that. So for me personally, I just think it's fun, and I love the community. I love the people. So it's never really stopped me from enjoying that. And I haven't found that in other sports as well. Probably because it's less weird for you to be on the basketball court or the soccer field.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this in the chat. Yes, in first year I played Quidditch, like Harry Potter. And
I don't think that's a great problem anymore. That's just that we're going to have to talk about it.
You know, it wasn't my strongest athletic performance, but it happened. It's out there. Confessing. Did it at the time in first year. I could say I was a dual sport athlete between Frisbee and Quidditch. So I played two fake sports.
I just wanted to add, Devon, I don't know if you saw when you were talking about basketball, I think I almost nodded my head off because that was the exact same experience. And I am horrible at basketball. And I definitely upset a lot of my friends last year when I was invited to watch the Raptors. And I'm like, yay, the Raptors won. But I was excited because everybody else was excited, but I don't watch basketball. I don't like basketball. I've never played basketball. So for me in high school, I can tell you that the reasons why I got into the sports that I got into was because I didn't have to try out. I didn't have to confront the fact that I didn't meet other people's expectations as to my abilities as an athlete because I was Black. And I didn't want to deal with people potentially being, giving me the side looks like, how can you be so terrible? That doesn't match with what you are supposed to be at all. So I just unconsciously drifted into sports where it was more of an attitude of, hey, you want to play? Come join us. I didn't have to try out. I hate trying out. I still hate trying out to this day, by the way. Very anxiety arising for me. And so touring was a big hurdle in that sense, because to go to tryouts and have people with clipboards and people watching and judging you kind of brought back all those latent feelings, I suppose. So for me, it was just kind of I didn't want to deal with disappointing other people's perspectives of what I should do. If that sounds ridiculous, even coming out of my own mouth, but that's how I felt.
All great points. The next question we want to get into is, have you ever felt like, quote, the only one on the team in an environment? How did you handle that? And Sid actually had a great point on that. She was wondering if you growing up in certain towns or cities or anything like that, did your hometown demographic reflect you being, quote, the only one? So a little bit on the team as well as how your upbringing would affect that. Tiffany, you made that point initially that you are from a very white town in the UK. Do you have any insight on that? And
so it stems, I think, from way back when. I've been doing, I don't know everything either. So I've been doing my own research and figuring out why X, Y, and Z is like X, Y, and Z. And so if I feel like if anyone were to look at my like my parents and my family, you would say, they've done pretty well for themselves. They have a house in a certain area of Nottingham where I live, and it, like I said earlier, like it is predominantly a white area. I went to a very white school, and all my as one of very few Black people in the entire school. So like Devon was saying earlier, like that's been my situation, that's been my experience from very, very little. I've felt always, like the only one. I've, realized and recognized that I might just be like their only black friend. Their only Black person they're close to. And it is a little bit unnerving sometimes, I think, and it's a different experience. But I've only ever known that. And I wonder how my experiences and how my journey in life and everything would have been completely different if I didn't grow up in the area that I did grow up in, if I went to a different school. So, you know, relating it back to the ultimate community and sports, I'm excited when I see more Black people in ultimate. I'm genuinely excited. I'm like, amazing. Where are you from? What part of the UK do you live? Like, what uni do you go to? Is there anything I can help you with? Like, stay, please. Like, honestly, I'm genuinely, I am excited. And I was thinking, I was doing, you know, some background reading and research. I wonder what more I can do. I wonder what more the ultimate community can do to, you know, bring more people of color into the sport, because I want them to feel comfortable. I want everyone to feel comfortable and supported. And so for me, like Devon was saying, I've only ever known that. I've only ever known that to be sort of the only one, and it's not a situation that I'm uncomfortable with. I've been in it for almost all my life. It's not a situation I'm uncomfortable with, but it's a situation that I wonder if I could change, if I could encourage more people of color to play ultimate. And I wonder if there's something we can do to help that. But for me personally, I've always sort of been the Black friend, being the Black girl. So for me, it's not uncomfortable. I'm just wondering what more I can do.
For me, to touch there as well, Tiffany said that I've never also felt uncomfortable. Like I said, I've been playing with Battleship for a year, and I'm definitely the only Black player on the team. And I would only say at first, it was a little bit awkward at first, and the only really saving grace of that was that I had played with and against some of the teammates in other leagues. So I kind of knew them, and they were kind of like my comfort to be able to not be completely like isolated. But for the majority of the time, it was not only was I the only Black player, but a Black person, I was even the one that didn't speak French as well. Like very, very basic enough to get by. So, having both of those were like, I wouldn't say I sometimes thought in the very beginning that, they're speaking French and I don't understand, are they talking about, me, or, am I doing something wrong? But, with the being Black as well, it quickly went away though. So I definitely could say right now that being with them in my fourth year, that I have been so much closer to them, and I definitely see them as family. I'm definitely someone personally that, like, I don't want to say push a lot of the like uncomfortable moments under the rug. Like, I'm very passive person that's just like, if you're a loving person, if you're cool to be around, I'm okay with that. I don't look at race, I don't look at color and those kind of things. Like we were discussing earlier, maybe just those very minimal comments or stuff that I hear every now and then. It may eat me a little bit, but for the majority of the time, I feel like with my personality that people will just like reciprocate that very well. So again, with my team, even though I was the only Black player, I've always still felt very, very comfortable because, like, again, only in the beginning, they were just trying to find that comfortable, thing, and maybe the microaggressions keywords were coming out very, very minimal, but we had the discussions, and then 3 years later down the road, we are like so close now, and like I said, they're my family, and I love them, each and every one of them. So.
Would anyone else like to make a comment on that?
You're talking about sport in general or ultimate now and being the one?
It's up to you.
I think if we're talking about ultimate, I think I've only ever back on it. I think I've only ever been the Black person on. No, actually, no. I started playing ultimate. I was really fortunate. My best friend Aaron at the time, and he also wanted to play frisbee with me. So we both went out to our local junior team tryouts, and I kind of had him, and we both played on the B team at Waterloo in first year together, so I had him there too. And even having him on the team was like Microaggressions jumped out because like he would get me and Aaron mixed up, and like if anyone knows, like Aaron and I don't really look anything alike. Like different builds, darker than me, different hairstyles. I really rocked the hat a lot in that time. So like I wore a hat, he didn't. We were on the same team for a whole season, and people still mix us up. So having another black person there was really nice because like I always had Aaron to bounce to, whether like it was just him being my best friend or him being the only black guy. But then as I got better in Ultimate, I was definitely like the only person on the team, and that just opens up the door to comments that you may not experience if you're not the only one. So like some people would be like, "Oh, I hate when black people do this." Then they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, Devon's here, but not you, man. Like you're a good one," like that type of thing. So I feel like that those comments really open the door to being the only black person because like you're such a model minority when you're like, he's well spoken, he's nice, he's not a criminal, he's not a thug, not like the rest of his kind, or he's not like the rest of the stereotypes. I feel like experience being the only black person opens up some of those types of progression.
I'd say, I guess for me, there's the side of actually being the only one, and then like feeling like you're the only one, whether that's self-imposed or in the circle that you're in. When I first got into it at Queens, I was the only one. So that was interesting. But then moving into the Toronto system, the Roy, the GT, the GOAT, the Rush, there was never that feeling of being the black sheep, or I guess the black goat. But like kind of Lance said before, like over the years, like there's actually a handful of us in the Toronto system, but you grow to be a family, and I've really enjoyed that aspect of the team. So my experiences have never felt like I'm the outsider or the one that doesn't belong.
And I would like to say the same thing. Like usually when I go to sport, it's kind of like that time you forget about what's going on in the world in your life. You just focus in on Ultimate. It's really nice being an Ultimate Frisbee player where sometimes you can forget about what's going on in life and like prejudice and the racism and the systemic oppression going on in the society and really like play Ultimate. But I just feel isolated sometimes when I'm gonna hit you with one of those comments and like used to having a black person where you can just like look over to and be like, does this person just say that? And you're like, yeah, it happened. Like, miss that, but when those comments hit and there's no one else to talk to about that looks like you, that's when I feel isolated.
Interesting.
For me, it's almost like I have an inner dialogue with myself. It's more kind of like I ask myself, why am I the only one? Is there something weird about me? Like, am I not supposed to be here? I think that's where I get kind of the self-doubt and the questioning and, you know, what it means to be a black person. But I want to agree with what Remi and what Devon said about my Ultimate community, the teams that I play for are all amazing. I mean, I'm just getting messages of people just like, oh my gosh, Kim, you're on my TV. This is amazing. Like, it's so supportive and loving, and I'm so grateful. I have so many of my best friends from playing Ultimate. I've never played on a team where I didn't feel included, and I didn't feel like I never was made to feel like an outsider. So I think Ultimate should be proud of that. Yeah, I'm grateful. I really am.
I think the just one last thing on this point is the other side of it was the color of Ultimate games, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen. It was really cool to be a part of it last January, the LA Throwback Edition, and it was refreshing to just be on the line with 7 people of color, because how many of us can say that that's really happened all that often in our Frisbee experience so far? Like usually you'd be very hard pressed to fill a line of 7 people of color, and to have 2 teams of that, just playing a tournament, raising awareness, and
That's wild.
Yeah, that was very cool. So kudos to the
That's
COD
actually
team.
that's been a goal of mine since I started playing Ultimate, to finally get a team where I can just put it in and line of 7 and
Downtown
almost there.
Bound.
We're almost there. Yeah, Remi, I'm recruiting you. I'm telling you right now, you're on my team.
Sounds good. Are there tryouts?
Nope.
Perfect.
Not with me. You're in.
Sign me up.
So that leads us to another question is, Remi, you talked about that game, and a lot of people watched that and were probably inspired by that and really appreciated that. Another question is, what is the importance to see other Black players, whether it's in highlight videos or just at tournaments in general? What is the importance of that?
Is that at me, or Tiff, are you jumping in there?
Sure.
You start. You go, Remi.
Okay. Yeah, so I was kind of speaking to this a little bit earlier. The representation piece is the biggest part. That's the way I see it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be highlight reels, but highlight reels are cool, and they definitely capture people's attentions, regardless of the audience. But being visible to other, I guess, people of color that are coming up through the system or just learning is important, regardless of the role you play on the field. Like I probably would not be the best role model for anybody of any color who wants to learn how to handle, but I have a specific role within the system, and I love my role. But it's good to see that people are taking on any kind of role on elite or higher level teams, just so that they know that they can do that as well, and they can start making the steps towards it. I know you're laughing, Julia, because you think I am a handler through and through, but sorry to disappoint you, I am not.
I can second that.
You see me, bro.
Yeah, me too.
D-line for life.
The better.
I can say for me that what's really the best part of seeing, like I said again, a person of color in a highlight video, again, someone just promoting spirit, it just makes me feel good that maybe not just me, but someone else from my background is, either doing something amazing, whether it be a highlight or promoting spirit, something to the community, just anything like that. Really gives me a better feeling to know that, my kind is being represented in a certain way. And it definitely motivates me to want to do something, whether, again, a highlight video or, a spirit of the game, promoting the community or anything like that. So I know that if I didn't see that a lot, it, one, wouldn't motivate me, and two, I'd probably be a bit more disappointed on whether the tournament itself or the community wasn't promoting, just good things from people of color promoting the tournament or whatever, or as well as our own kind not doing as much to, promote the spirit of the game or anything like that. But again, my point is, like, to see that just at least helps them to motivate me to want to also do well in my community. Or
Yeah,
Tiffany, did you want to make a point?
Well, I mean, Remi, and that's basically made it beautifully. It was just, representation, just showing the younger generation coming through, like Remi said, that nothing's sort of unachievable, unobtainable. Like, we play at the highest level, we play up there, and we can do it. It's just showing, the younger generation really, like, we are up there and we can, sort of like combat with the best. And I think it is amazing, like Lance just said, to sort of push and motivate yourself. Like, it's incredible. I think Black people as a community, well, again, just from my sort of personal experience, where sort of my family and my friends and we just push each other. We want to be up there, and I think it'll be amazing to see some more representation, the same fight and the same loud voices as you have with gender as well. We want to see open, we want to see women's as well. We want to see people of color as well. Ultimate is beautiful. I've had a very incredible experience. I think on the whole, very, very inclusive. So let's just keep running with that momentum and really show, everyone and anyone is welcome. Everyone and anyone is safe within the ultimate community. And everyone and anyone can represent. And I think that's, sort of one of the reasons why it's important and why it should really be up there.
Nice. I'm just going to move this on a little bit more. We had a question from Waffles in a Can, who is Edmund. He said, how can we encourage more people of color into joining Ultimate without directly being like, hey, I'm recruiting you for this sport where we don't have enough Black people or people of color? Do you want to play? How do you think you could best do that? In my opinion, I think having those kind of highlight videos and things like that would help a lot. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I can start this off. So essentially, I think it's the part of going on why representation matters is because it shows people hey, you don't have to break through. You're not going to be the first Black person to make the team. You're not going to be the only Black person to play the sport. It takes a lot of pressure off knowing hey, I can just play Frisbee to play Frisbee. Also, just showing how legitimate the sport is, because I've tried to bring my Black friends to league or to play Ultimate in high school, and they're kind of like, Devon, who's all white? And I'm like, I know, that's why we need you here. So kind of just legitimizing the sport, showing them hey, there are Black people here, there are Black people making plays. When I finally figured out who Remi was, and I was like, oh my gosh, that guy's on GOAT, he's on Rush, it's kind of good, and he's Black. I'm I can make Rush now too, you know what I mean? Because I see Remi there, so why can't I be there? So I think it's just getting more visible faces there. This, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's 5 Black Ultimate players. Whoa, that's so cool, and just getting it out to the Black community, letting them know it's legitimate. There are Black people here for you. You're not going to be the only one. You're not going to be the first one, and you can play the sport, and you have a lot of talents to bring.
Here's a question. How did all of you actually get started playing Ultimate? Specifically, who or what got you into the sport?
It was really random, but in my sailing days, the guy who played Frisbee, and he kind of just brought his disc out, and downtime in between training sessions, kind of was throwing the Frisbee, and I was like, what is this? And then I met this guy again after that season of sailing, but when it was brought into high school, I was kind of this is the game Mike liked. This is the sport I played. I was no good at it, but I was I'm just gonna play this so I can go message Mike and be I went to Ultimate Frisbee trials. That's pretty funny. And then it just stuck. I was just having so much fun in the sport, wanted to get so much better at it, wanted to keep playing. Yeah, so it was just more I wanted to do this because my friend did it, and I could tell my friend I did it. That's how I got into Ultimate.
I can go ahead for it, Lance. Go for it.
Yeah, sorry. I started off in high school, and it was just one of the sports that we learned for our gym class. But also, my gym teacher had played in one of the city leagues, and while we were just playing in the class, he was like, "Yo, you want to just come out to one of our league games?" And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it actually was when we first started playing in the high school that I fell in love instantly. So I was like, you know what? I just want to play more and more and more. I just want to get better. So when I went out to his leagues, I was like, okay, how can I get on my own team? So I kept on asking, and from there it was just full speed, 4 times a week, 3 games a night. It was just boom, boom, boom. And so I credited my gym teacher starting the sport.
I guess backing up to high school, I went to an all boys school, and I actually frisbee wasn't even ever on my radar back in grade 10 or 11 or whatnot. But I was on the track and field team, and just building the story, I hated track and field practice. Whatever the life of me, I just couldn't get myself to do it, and the only way to really get out of it was to go to another sport practice, because they were pretty fluid on the track practice if you had nothing else going on, and the only other sport in that time slot was frisbee. So I was like, okay, fair enough. We'll give this a try. It can't be worse than track practice. So I did that, and because it was an all guy school, it was the only sport in the school that was co-ed, because it was paired with one of the other girls' schools. So that was also fun. So basically started as a mixed player. And then getting a university was like the real start, after getting cut from the soccer team and just wanting to stay active. So a lot of ups and downs there.
A friend of mine just dragged me kicking and screaming. In my first year of university, she was like, I found this really cool sport. Do you want to come play? I think it's going to be really fun. And I asked her what it was. And I was like, no, I don't. What do you do? And then in the second year of uni, she became captain. She was like, no, you need to play. Like, I think you're going to have a great time. And loved it ever since. I definitely owe it all down to her, bless her, because I would not know anything about it. Met some amazing people because she literally dragged me to play.
And I think it's really cool you mentioned that, because like, I'll go for it, Kim.
No, I was going to say, except for Remi's story, Remi, that was not the story I was expecting you to tell, but I loved it. But
Okay.
for the rest of us, we all started playing because somebody invited us to play, not because we were Black, but they invited us to play as a friend. And so, to answer the original question, how do you get more Black people to play? I don't know if maybe people need to even start being more reflective about their friend circles in general, and asking yourselves, well, because here's the other thing. I would never want somebody to invite me to play on a team or participate in any activity really because I was Black. That I want people to invite me to participate in things and do activities because, they see a particular skill set, or they see, some kind of ability in me that makes them want me to join their team or be part of their activity. You don't want your skin color to be part of the equation in terms of that invitation. For me, I was invited to play not because of my skin color. I was invited to play because of my gender, which is a completely other different conversation that I'm sure we don't have time for today. But it was basically, I had friends that were just like, we need a girl to play. You're athletic, you come play. So that's how I got into Ultimate. But I think the point of how do we get more people playing Ultimate? Well, invite your friends. And the same way everybody else gets into Ultimate, you invite your friends. And if you don't have Black friends, then that's on you.
That's a great transition. Thank you. I want to get into kind of more specifically, what different groups can do. So we're going to start with maybe what the community, so whether Ultimate Canada or UK Ultimate, can do to better support players of color or people of color. Then we're going to go into teams and kind of like maybe selection process, tryouts, that kind of stuff, and then into teammates. So let's start. So think about how you're tiering kind of your answers for each individual one. Does anyone have any suggestions on how maybe Ultimate Canada or UK Ultimate can better support players of color?
Like, if Ultimate Canada had a color of Ultimate game, like, I think that would be a good way to start. Like, it would just show, like, one, you're highlighting people of color in the sport, and obviously there are going to be Black people there. Like, I'm sure Remi would get invited. And then we're just going to see more Black people playing. There's going to be a highlight video. I'm going to show my friends and be like, hey, not just a white sport. Come play. I think if it was a color of Ultimate for Ultimate Canada, that'd be really cool. Or even in like, I don't know, if like a local club team wanted to do a showcase game of people of color in Ultimate, like I'm sure Tuck could set that up or something like that. Like just representation matters, you know, like get people of color visible in the sport, kind of dispersed throughout a bunch of different clubs.
I will say that it has been brought up to Ultimate Canada to get a color of Ultimate style game featured. So it has been tabled so far. So we'll just wait and see if it comes to life.
I had mentioned to the group a bit earlier that my community did something during Black History Month that highlighted a couple of Black people in the sport. And I definitely really liked that. It, not only highlighted them, as a Black person of themselves, but also like in the Ultimate community, and kind of gave them a background of what they brought to the sport and what they've done in their community. And I definitely liked that. I would for sure like to see something like that being kind of continued on, for sure tying into the color game. Would definitely be something as well too.
I love the idea. I think the idea is really, really amazing. Like Devon said, like Remi said, like Lance said, just for like the representation. I have actually been thinking, and it has been difficult to see, what could I, speak to UK Ultimate about, and how can I help push this forward. So I'm really interested to see, what everyone else on the panel is going to sort of say, because I have been racking my brain to see how I can help sort of from the UK. So I'm definitely interested to see what everyone else is saying.
To bounce back, for a lot of Canadians, like with the UK, it's not similar to how we are in the GTA, where like most people play this sport in high school. Like I think Tiff could say like a lot of people start Frisbee in university, and that's kind of like their first taste of Ultimate. So I think if UKU did something more with schools, or like form, I think it is, that they would get a lot more representation in the sport. Because if you're already, obviously it's going to lead to a bigger issue, but like if we're already, there's more white people in universities anyways, and less percentage of Black people or people of color in universities, then you're only going to catch white people in the sport. So if they started in schools or high school where there's more representation, then people don't have to play at university. They can just play in their local club, versus like going to a club tryout, touring tryout with no Frisbee experience. Like not many people would do that. So if they played more at school, I think that would definitely help UKU out in terms of like people of color in the sport.
Yeah, I think they definitely, and like local teams as well. I think it's taken a lot on the local team to try and feed sort of down into the schools and in the sixth form. You're exactly right. So maybe it's just sort of seeing where these local teams are based, and if they have access to go into a wider range of schools. So it's definitely something that I need to look into. I don't know everything about it, and I'm sure you can in there with all their schools, but I definitely need to look into it a bit more for sure.
I'm just going to bounce kind of some more ideas out there. I don't actually know, does Ultimate Canada have someone in a position of like a diversity representative, or someone whose role, whether it's a committee or just a person whose role is to make sure that diversity is being represented across Ultimate Canada? Do we know if there's any role like that, whether a committee or a person? Does anyone know?
I thought there was a committee. I vaguely remember them having like canvassing for applications not too long ago, but I'm not sure I've seen anything come out from them, if that committee does exist. So
yeah,
getting back on that or restarting that might be a good starting spot for Ultimate Canada or UK Ultimate.
Yeah, and then my next question was, what would that committee do? Like, what kind of actions could they do? Maybe working on a color of ultimate. Is that what it was called? You know, something like that, some kind of game. And how could maybe, you know, UK Ultimate use that kind of committee to benefit them? Just some thoughts.
Yeah, I guess one of the really impressive things I've always seen in the USAU side is the GUM initiative, and if we could do something similar for POCs.
What's that?
The Girls Ultimate Movement could be the Black Ultimate Movement, although that acronym is way worse. But we can work on the marketing. You okay, Julia?
Yeah, I actually just choked on my water. I don't think I've ever actually choked on water before. That's really good. I think that's a great idea.
Sorry,
I've never heard of GUM before. What does GUM do? Like,
Google it.
I don't know if you know.
Tell the people. I don't know either. Share.
You know what? I don't know what all their actual initiatives are, but they're really focused on increasing the gender equity, the gender diversity in the sport, and they have a series of initiatives across the U.S. and they seem to have gained a lot of traction behind it. So I was just kind of hoping that we could start something similar on the north of the border.
I'm just looking at the website now. It looks like they have a lot of like they have very young girls. Look like they're just tossing frisbees. So I think it'd be smart for anyone who's interested to look up gum.usaultimate.org, learn a little bit more of that, and then maybe understand how we can use, you know, ideas and help it influence us to, you know, create a movement like BUM. I think that would be great. I think we should do it. Just kidding. We can definitely come up with a better, because it would be Black Ultimate Movement.
You heard it here first.
That was so good. But I think it'd be great to just get an idea of like how do they encourage people to play? How do they get young girls out? You know, that kind of stuff. So I think as someone who always worked at a all girls camp, you just like to be around like-minded people and people who look like you. So I think having, you know, a people of color kind of group where it's everyone who looks the same as you. So then you never have to feel like you're the only one. You are a part of, you know, that team of seven, that line of seven. That could definitely encourage people. So that's definitely something to consider. Does anyone have any other thoughts in regards to what, you know, Ultimate Canada or UK Ultimate can do?
I really like Tiff's point about recruiting people, like addressing the issue right from the schools. I think getting more youth and getting more youth of Black youth and youth of color involved in the sport early on. It would be great if we could get, because I'm a teacher, coaching resources. I know that Ultimate Canada was in the process of creating videos. It would be nice to see making sure that representation is included in any kind of instructional materials that are provided by Ultimate Canada would be nice. And then even showcase games, if we make sure that showcase games are maybe in areas or communities that are underserved or more representative of the diversity that we're looking to attract. I think that will also help as well. I mean, I know my students, and a lot of times, and I do work in an inner city school, and I coach Ultimate every year. And every year I say, guys, we're going to play Ultimate. And they're like, what? But once I show it to them, they're really keen and they're really excited. So I think a lot of it's just that exposure to it and letting them know what it is and how the game's, because they know basketball, they see it all the time. They know soccer, they see it all the time, but Ultimate's not on their radar. So whatever you can do to just increase the optics in general of the game.
Like we need to send a bunch of emails to Ultimate Canada. Everyone in the stream, you guys know what to do. And UKU Ultimate, even if you're not in the UK. Call tab.
What do you mean? They're watching right now. They're watching now.
So let's move on to maybe teams and leadership. So how can teams, whether it's running tryouts in different formats, whether it's team selection, someone had a comment, Never Run with Scissors made a comment. What are people's thoughts when it comes to like team selection? Should teams take a lack of representation into consideration, or keep it entirely performance-based? So some different jumping points there, if anyone would like to start us off.
I don't know. I feel like whenever someone, well, yeah, honestly, go for it, Lance.
Please.
Oh, please.
Too polite. Canadian.
I would say that I feel like just trying to base it off of, if you think you need more representation on your team to just select that way, I think that kind of opens another like can of worms as well. So I would say the really first thing that I would like to see happen that would kind of make it easier for those selection on the team stuff would be to having maybe the group of people that already are in the sport to maybe come together and like I said doing the color game and that would already start the wave of that maybe next people of color coming to the sport. And so that when you have the trials coming, that at least more will now show up. And I just, to the point again of the selection, I don't necessarily know if I would feel better if, because I know Kim had said earlier, well, for the basketball, if you just chose me because I was black when I have absolutely no idea, know what I'm doing. So that I feel like if you just chose another black person to be on your team because you have like low representation, and if let's say they weren't really that good, you would still kind of get them feeling that way inside on, well, I really think that was like the baddest of the rest of the group that was out there. So did you only choose me because, you need to make your quota or whatever? So I think that's another very grayish line to kind of go on in terms of like the selection process. But I think at least if you start, like I said, with the color game and kind of getting more people at least be more interested to come out, and when they come out and trying stuff that you can actually again, like Kim said earlier, that now you're looking at a more group of black people there, but now be able to start to say, okay, well, their talent, maybe their personality, they can bring something to the team specifically, an energy, leadership. At least you'll have a more thing to, like if you only had like two representatives and say, oh, well, I just need to pick one just so I have.
And I think you made a good point, Lance, in terms of like other roles people can fill, but I don't know why people, whenever we talk about representation, it seems like people like to jump to the extremes, like, am I going to put a black person on the team that's obviously below our team standards just because they're black? Like, I think a lot of people know in tryouts, it's not usually that cut and dry, you know what I mean? There's like, especially with the bottom and spots on a roster, there's a lot of gray area in between people you can choose. And I think it comes down to that, and you have an all white top of your roster and see someone who's unquote like good at Frisbee, like coach of Devon, actually, like Mike Lewis said, like it's very subjective to say someone's good at Frisbee, right? Because like Remi said, he fills a certain role on GOAT. If he was looking to be a handler, he probably wouldn't make the team, like that type of thing. So I think you should think about representation whenever you're picking a roster, but don't think it's like, I'm just going to put an Asian person on this team just because we need color and they're really bad at Frisbee. Because like Lance said, they're going to feel neglected. They're going to feel like, am I here just because I'm Asian, just because they needed that token black person, right? So I think it's more along the lines of like, if you're choosing between people and if someone's up to your standard and if you see potential in someone, go pick them on the team by all means. Don't let those implicit biases take over that I'm used to being around all white people, so I'm going to pick an all white team. You know what I mean? Don't let that take over. But definitely like try to make your team as diverse as possible. If there are people who are up to your team standard and like you want to move forward with them, especially if it's a developmental team, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, I still think I would have made GOAT with my handling abilities, but you're totally right. From a tokenism perspective, like that has, I guess, adverse effects on the other side of the coin, and nobody really wants. Well, you don't really want to put people in that position, and I don't think anybody benefits from tokenism for the sake of for namesake.
The one thing that I would add is you guys are talking about, when you're making a roster. I think something that the teams really need to consider is who they're inviting to their tryouts and how they can make sure that they are inviting people or giving people that opportunity. As I've already stated, I'm not a fan of tryouts. And if I didn't have people in my ultimate circles who literally said to me, no, you are trying out for this team, I don't know that I ever would have gone into touring. And I would have missed out on such a vital, part of my life now. I would have missed out on friendships and that level of community. So I think, sometimes it might be as small a gesture as emailing someone directly, the form for them to fill out to try out for the team with a little note to say, I've seen you play. We love to, have you come to our tryout and see what you've got. Like sometimes that's all a person needs to know that, hey, I'm going to be considered. I can do this. I can be there. I am possible. I can see myself on that team in that role. And that little piece of encouragement can really do a lot for a person.
Yeah, that's great. Do we have any other thoughts in regards to what teams can do? Maybe what about teams representation? So teams already been made, whether they have people of color or not. Is there anything that they can do, and maybe their representation in their social media, different things like that, that can help people of color, again, whether they're on their team or not? I mean, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in the sense that it might be, performative in, we support Black Lives Matter, or we're doing something like that without actual action. But I just thought if there's anything there that teams that already exist might be able to help support people of color.
Kind of like what we touched upon before, like start at the grassroots level. Like teams are usually formed in May in Canada usually, and a lot earlier in the UK. So they could go into schools, and May and June is when a lot of Frisbee competition happens in high school. So like they could go help coach various schools in their city, or like donate their time in that aspect to really like, hey, we play ultimate Frisbee. We are gonna like go coach different schools in the team. Like that could be an idea.
Yeah, I like that. I like that point that Devon said about volunteering their time. If you show that you're going out there, into the community, the schools and, even community centers or something like that to promote your team or the sport, it definitely shows not only the people of the community, but people of color as well can see that you are, caring enough to come out there and, show your sport, show your team and stuff. And that might also give them some sort of motivation to try and feel welcome and stuff. Like you include them like with the clinics and like Devon said, teaching them a class or that too.
The tournament.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. So moving on to individuals and teammates. So how can your teammates, your white teammates, anyone who's not Black, essentially, how can your teammates better serve you? We talked a little bit about microaggressions and things like that. Might fall into that, might fall into the stereotypes. What do you guys think?
For me, I just I feel like it's, again, the communication is a big thing. It's again, at a lot of times when people are having discussions or even just playing around and stuff, maybe a couple of microaggression stuff may step up every now and then, or like Remi had discussed a bit earlier about you being so comfortable with your teammates, and then if either a new person that came into the fold or even an opponent or something like that, and that kind of comment slips up that they must have been comfortable with you saying, but maybe someone else took it a different way. I would just want them just to be aware, and I continually keeping that communication open, or at least like being committed to discussing that at any moment. So I try to be open as much as possible, right? There's times where, again, we said earlier about putting things under the rug and not necessarily feeling comfortable to talk about it because maybe we're either trying to work our way into the team or something like that. So I would just say, for a team's perspective, if you just are unaware about something or unsure about something, that just feel comfortable to come up and talk to me about it and just talk. And I feel like once we have the communication and we are aware about each other's feelings and intentions or whatever, I think it would make it a bit easier to be able to go forward and at least knowing that I care and feeling feeling part of the family, of the team, and not just like on the side.
I think especially at this sort of time where we have a really big Black Lives Matter movement and everyone is reading about it. I've got such good teammates and such good friends around me. They're going out and they're finding resources and following more educational about the Black Lives movement on social media and watching X, Y, and Z on Netflix, and they've gone out and they're starting to, which is really amazing to see, like, educate themselves. And so if we have, especially with the team that I played, like the committee and everyone, if they have that basis, that education underneath their belt of what people of colour have gone through and what Black people have gone through, then hopefully that will naturally come out when talking, when supporting, when to a Black ultimate player. So I think just the education side and learning about it and everything like that, then you'll be more aware of maybe the microaggressions, the micro insults, and so it might just be a basis of educating and going back to the teams thing. Maybe that's a basis of putting that out there. If you're on committee for a team, having those resources just to make sure that, because Ultimate is a very inclusive sport, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and it's X, Y, and Z. This is what we all can do to make sure that everyone's feeling comfortable. And maybe that's a conversation to be had. Maybe there's resources to be had and share amongst the players. Maybe they've never had to think of it that way. Maybe they've never been themselves in that situation, that experience. And so it can really start with everyone on the team, because at the end of the day, they are a team. And then maybe working together and having that conversation, like Lance said, just feeling comfortable enough, just having that conversation with that teammate, with that friend, and really educating themselves.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, if there's one thing that I could ask, or I would love to see my teammates and my league mates do, is just do research on what it means to be an ally. We've all talked already today about the positive experiences in general that we've had in the Ultimate community, but we also do have to face the reality that not everyone in Ultimate is quite there yet in terms of where they need to be in terms of like their feelings and attitudes towards Black Lives Matter and the movement. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was just a week ago, I was on the Ultimate Facebook group, one of the many Ultimate Facebook groups there are, and the moderator of the group posted something to the effect of against the officer who had murdered George Floyd. And somebody in the group had commented on the post to say, you need to take this down. We need to keep politics out of the Ultimate community. And that post, one, that post hurt me. And two, the number of people who liked that post hurt me, because it showed that there are some people who still don't think that Black Lives Matter, who don't care, who enjoy their privilege, that they don't, it's something that they can just turn off and not think about and not want to have to deal with. And the only thing that made me feel better after reading that post was the number of people who instantly responded, and not Black people, the number of people in the community who instantly responded to shut that individual down, to say, no, this is exactly the space, it's not politics, it's humanity. So that's what I would like to see and have my friends and have my teammates and my league mates be willing to do for me, is stand with me when things like this happen in solidarity, and, not just see it as a Black issue. It's a human issue, and it's something that does need all of us to work on together.
If we're talking about just what an individual can do, like these three people have said, educating yourself. And the more educated you are, the less likely those microaggressions are going to slip out of your mouth, because that's what you really think. The more you check your implicit biases, the better you're going to treat people of color, because you don't make certain racial stereotypes about them. And like, the more you educate yourself, the more you're going to be confident enough to speak out when things like that happen. Like, if someone says a microaggression toward a person of color on your team, they're going to be able to say, like, I know why that's wrong. I'm going to tell you why that's wrong. And I'm going to speak out. Oh, this person of color doesn't have to speak out for themselves. Because it's really exhausting, like, being on a Frisbee team and having to, like, really, like, jab at every comment made at you. It's really exhausting. But if other people, other allies, and that's really what allyship is really, like, being an active role. It's beyond posting a Black square on Instagram. It's beyond tweeting hashtag Black Lives Matter. It's beyond all this performative allyship that you see online. It's really having those tough conversations. It's really going for your people of color teammates and supporting them. And like Kim said, standing with them. Like, it's like, there's so many Ultimate teams in Canada, and there's probably so many Ultimate teams who haven't talked about this. Probably because they think they're just a Frisbee team. It's not their issue. It's a political thing. It's not what the purpose. We want to talk about workouts. We want to just go on life as regular. And it's really nice that you can switch off that privilege, but so many of us don't get that privilege. So many of us see people that are dying that are the same color as our skin. Many of us have to just go through these microaggressions, go through our life, these racism that's so normalized. And the more you educate yourself, the more you're going to understand, or begin to understand, like, what these players of color on your team have gone through their entire life. And the better you'll be at easing their pain and speaking up for them and making a post in a group and opening a dialogue and really talking about this issue. Because, like Kim said, it's more than Ultimate. It's more than just a Black Lives Matter protest. It's a human rights issue, and it's really something we all need to be cognizant of, and we all need to step up and really talk about it, especially if you have a Black person on your team, especially if you have a person of color on your team, especially if you have no one of color on your team. That should even mean you can amplify your voice even more. So yeah, that's my point.
I was gonna literally make that exact point, Devon, that even if you're on a team without someone who's Black, you have to be able, and hopefully your team environment is open and welcoming enough that if someone calls you out and says, hey, what you just said there was racist, that's not okay, that everyone can learn and grow with each other, not just because we're trying to protect our one Black player over there, like, let's make sure he doesn't hear what you just said, but instead anyone and everyone needs to be able to call each other out, whether you have someone Black or any other color on your team. You have to be able to be willing to call each other out, and I think that's the best thing. So does anyone have anything else in regards to what teammates can do? Okay. That basically concludes our major questions that we've had on the table. This last part has been fantastic, some real action items, and they've actually been written down, and we're going to post them. Theo will post to One and Only Sports after, just basically giving a overview of some action items that different teams, Ultimate Canada, things like that, and players can do. So that's fantastic. Does anyone have any other remarks, anything else that they'd like to add into this? There's a lot that's been discussed. We're all probably very emotional, but does anyone have anything else to add?
I'll just say that it's been good. It's been refreshing. It's been a really good discussion. I think we've really covered a lot of bases, and we've really moved through a lot of the emotional spectrum in terms of like what we've experienced, what we've seen, where we go forward, how we can develop initiatives to really push through this. So I just want to say that it's been really good so far, and a great discussion.
Yeah.
And I just want to reiterate, like, go for it.
Sorry. I just want to say that, again, I really loved this discussion, and definitely so happy to hear from different perspectives and, the Canada community as well as the UK. I just want to say that, one, I'm very, very thankful in the spot that I'm being in Canada, and not necessarily had experiencing racism for the majority of my life and stuff, but it still gets me to feel a type of way when you look out in the world and see how much is going on in other places, and it definitely, again, makes me sympathize a lot, but also still very thankful for the position I am, the community of friends, family that I have around me that continues to get me through, and my faith as well that has pushed me as well through that. So what the last point I would like to put out and advice for people is, again, it's what we were discussing about looking out for everybody. We want to make sure that in any situation that we're all going to stand up for one another and, try our best to help each other in anything. If we see wrong, it's just be able to stand up and, just be there for one another as well. Like we just said, just for this specific time, as Blacks, we just feel like this is our time to just, say that we do matter a lot. That's been going on for so long. So, this is, I'm so happy that I did this, and, it's definitely got me thinking about things, and in the future be able to talk about it more with my family and friends and community and try to be that voice that I can and brave to talk about it. I really appreciate the fellow panelists and the audience for tuning in and hearing from our side. Definitely do my part to.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to say, because I had a conversation with a couple of friends earlier today, and they said as much as reading is and resources that they're learning from, they're almost kind of frightened and kind of scared to put anything on social media, fear of the backlash, just in case they haven't worded it in the right way, and I've seen a situation on social media where my friends, family, teammates, they're trying, they're educating themselves, they're trying, and some of the backlash is coming from other white friends, just saying, it's not quite right, or amplifying the Black voice because how do you know they want X, Y, and Z or whatever. I just want to say to those people, like, as long as you're educating yourself, as long as you're wanting to make a real change and understand from the grassroots level, then in my eyes and my perspective, you can't really do any wrong. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited that people are sharing these resources, and I'm excited they're sharing the Netflix documentaries or the movies, the films, whatever. And they're really trying to make a change, and so don't be scared and don't be frightened. It's out there for a reason. It's amazing that they're willing to take that step forward and really understand the Black experience from the start. And I don't want anyone to have that fear or have that that be frightened that they're not sort of either doing enough or be frightened that if they do speak out, they're going to be sort of crucified for it. I just think as long as you're on this journey with us, on this path, you're educating, you're with us, and you're standing with us. From me personally, that's what we need. You're, like Kim said, like Devon said, you're wanting to actively be that ally. Then that's amazing, and you shouldn't have that fear of just did I share the right thing? Did I put it quite right? Did I stand with us? That's all we're asking. Be our ally, stand with us.
And like, I know for a lot of people, like, this is like, these past 2 weeks has been a lot for you guys because this is the first time a lot of people are aware of race and aware of racial tensions and aware of what's going on in the world. But I think just start somewhere. Start with a quick Google search. If we talked about words that you didn't know, hit a quick Google search. Us 5 people right now are willing to share our stories and educate you guys. But like, had you asked me a week and a half ago, I wouldn't have wanted to talk about this. I was grieving. I was sad. I was mad. It shouldn't be on your Black friends to really educate yourself. So like, just Google. There's so many resources out there. You're probably going to mess up. Like anything you do in life, like when you start, you're probably not going to be the best at it. So you can really just keep working at it. You're going to keep getting better at it over the years. Just like keep at it like it's a new skill. And allyship is going to be new to a lot of people, but that's the beauty of it. Like you can just start anywhere and do your little part. Be like, you know what? This week I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to try to do this better next time I play Frisbee. I'm going to try to do this better in life. I'm going to try something, start somewhere, do better. And that's all we can really ask for, right?
Awesome. Kim, do you have any final remarks, or did everyone say exactly what you were going to say?
Devon and Tiffany stole what I was going to say. I mean, communicated my thoughts perfectly. So thank you to both of you, and thank you, Julia, for moderating this discussion. I said at the beginning, I was very, very apprehensive about participating because, you know, as much as people out there might be worried about saying the wrong thing to a Black person, all of us communicated the worry of communicating our ideas, you know, in a way that maybe is not the best. So we all have these anxieties, we all have these fears, and so thank you so much, Julia, for your guidance, and to everybody for participating today. I'm really glad that we did this.
Thank you.
Yes, this was fantastic. Thank you for all of you, all of your time and effort. Tiffany, being up at midnight now in UK, we really appreciate it. So
it's 1 o'clock in the morning now, Julia. It's not even midnight.
Oh no! Oh man. So thank you. I think we're going to sign off now, and hopefully we can have a discussion like this again. Keep growing, keep learning. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Good night.